In the unit 4 that we are starting today, we have to basically talk about the system development life cycle, right? Now, let us first understand what we mean by system development life cycle before actually discussing it. See, system, I hope you understand that we have talked about different types of management information systems. We have talked about the TPS, EIS, decision support system, the expert system. So all these are systems. And if you are planning to have any of these systems in your organization, or supposing you are working for some customer, some client organization, let's say you are a company which does this kind of work for a client organization, then in that case also, whichever system you are planning to implement in your client organization, be it the TPS or be it DSS or be it any other type of system, here in this particular unit we are going to talk about that particular process, right? So by system we mean any of the systems. It could be the TPS or the DSS or the executive information system, IRS, any kind of system. And what do we mean by the development life cycle? I hope you understand. Life cycle means different stages through which a particular thing evolves. So the life cycle of system development would mean how and when do we initiate system development, when is it that the need is felt for the organization to have a system, then what all inputs go into development of the system, how the system is then implemented, and then, for example, how training etc. is carried out, and then how the system after some point of time loses its utility and is then replaced by another system. So we are going to discuss all these aspects in the system development life cycle. Now, one last caution that I would advise you to exercise is, I hope you remember that we had discussed MIS both in the narrow sense as well as in the broad sense. Here the name of the subject basically is use of MIS in the broad sense, and within MIS we have talked about the IRS, which I said is very much similar to MIS. So that MIS, which was a part of management information systems in the broader sense, so that particular MIS, which we also called as IRS, which we also termed as IRS, that is the narrower MIS, right? Likewise here also, when we are going to talk about system development life cycle, we are taking into account all the stages in the life cycle, right from the beginning when the need is felt till the very end when a system completes its life and then is modified or then is replaced by some other system. So here the development would mean the whole life, and then the development is being used in the broader sense. However, within the system development life cycle there are different stages. For example, we start with the feasibility analysis, and then we move over to the analysis part, system analysis, and then we move over to the system design part, and then we will encounter a stage which is known as system design and system development. Please understand, that would be the development in the narrower sense. So within the system development life cycle we will have a particular stage which would be known as the system design, system development stage. So there the use of development would be in the narrower sense. So don't get confused between the two. Now let us first understand what are the various approaches for which are used for developing the system, for this system development. So basically there are indeed a few approaches, but we are only going to discuss two of them here, and that two in very brief. So the first approach is known as the top-down approach, right? And the second approach naturally is the opposite of it and is known as the bottom-up approach. Now let us understand what we mean by the top-down approach. See, as you can understand by the name itself, top-down approach, something would be done at the top and then it would percolate down, right? So what is happening here is that the control programs. Now what are control programs? These will be the programs which are outlining all the subprograms. So first of all, the control programs would be developed and tested, right? So there would be one control program and it would outline all the subprograms that will have to be developed. So the control program will be developed first. So control program in essence will tell us what all subprograms I hope you understand, lower level programs have to be developed, right? And then once this control program has been developed, which is basically a blueprint of what all subprograms do we need, then we move down and we start developing the subprograms and testing them. And once we are through with all the subprograms that we need, we have developed all of them, we have tested all of them, then we are going to integrate them with the higher level programs, and this way we will get the whole system, right? Now what you need to understand is that while I'm talking about the process, I'm only mentioning the subprograms, but it could be that there is another category of even lower programs. There could be sub-program, then sub-program, which would be one notch below the sub-program. So when I'm using the subword to twice, it would mean that it is one notch below, one level below the subprogram. And if I'm using the sub-program, I'm using the subword thrice, it would mean that it is two notches, two levels below the subprogram. So this way we'll keep moving downwards, and then we will integrate all of these subprograms into the higher level programs, into their high level programs. The high levels would be integrated into their higher level. This way we'll integrate and then we will get the whole system. So this is going to be the approach as far as the top-down approach is concerned. However, the problem would be that information need of the top managers would be considered first. Right, now this is one problem with this kind of an approach. Now please understand, now this does not mean here the top manager does not mean the top management of the organization. Supposing we are developing an MIS, or let's say we are developing a TPS, and you know that TPS is generally used at the operational level. There could be exceptions, but generally it is used at the operation level. So naturally, in case of TPS, when we are talking about the top managers, we are basically referring to the senior most people within the operational level only. So it could be the assistant manager, or it could be some kind of a deputy manager, it could be the supervisor also at times. So this is what we mean by the top manager. So this top management does not mean the organizational top management. We are referring to the top management of that particular level for which we are developing a system. So if it is TPS, it is the top level of managers within the operational level. And if it is if it is DSS or executive, if it is decision support system or expert system, then probably we are talking about the top level within the top level of the organization also, right? So don't get confused here. And now the problem is, since we are considering the information need of top managers first, and why are we doing this? Because if the top managers have to be able to meet their targets and they have to perform well, their subordinates also have to meet their targets and perform well, right? Which means if you are taking into account the information requirements of the top managers, it is automatically including the information requirement of the subordinate staff, because the top level managers' information would ultimately depend on the information which is available at the subordinate levels. Until unless the subordinate levels have all their information, and until unless they are able to perform well and they are able to fulfill the task assigned to them, the higher level, the top level positions would not be able to meet their targets, and they would also not have the information that they need. So basically, when we are taking into account the top level requirements, we are basically including the information requirements of the subordinate levels also. However, the drawback is that this would mean that our operational staff would not be fully involved, because we are moving in this direction, right? We are moving from top to down, and we are considering the top manager's requirement first. So basically we are not starting with a consideration of what the operational staff at the subordinate level requires and what all information requirements do they have. We are not concerned with that, because we are starting with the information needs of the top managers, right? In the bottom approach, we will move in the opposite direction. Please understand. Here what we will do, we will first of all, for all the specific tasks, basically we'll develop the subprograms. Here we started with the development. So what you need to remember is, here we started with the control program, then we developed the subprogram. In bottom up approach, we are starting with the subprograms, and then we will integrate it into the complete system. So there is no background structure provided by the control program here in the bottom up approach. Remember this. Right? So this is the difference between the top down approach and the bottom up approach. In top down, the control program is the first thing that you start with, which gives you an overall structure, which gives you a blueprint of what all subprograms are required, and then you go ahead with developing and testing and integrating these subprograms. However, here in the bottom up approach, what we do is we start with the subprograms and then integrate them. So integration would take place in both the places, but what we start with is the subprogram, right? So this is the difference between the two approaches. The other approaches also, as I told you, but we are not going to discuss them. The total study approach and the critical success factor approach, we are not going to get into them, right? Now let us move over to the main topic that we have to discuss in this particular unit, and that is the system development life cycle. I hope you remember my deliberation that we had on what we mean by the development here and what we mean by the development here. I hope you remember that I was talking about the difference between the two developments here. Here development is used in the broader sense, which basically is referring to all these 6 stages, right? Here development is in relatively narrower sense, which is only talking about a particular stage, right? Stage number 3. Fine. So let us have a brief look at system development life cycle. We start with investigating. We start with investigating the requirements of the organization before actually setting up, before actually installing or planning for the system, and then we analyze the requirements, then we design based on the analysis. Here basically, let me be more clear. Investigation, we are trying to find out whether in the first place you require the new system or not. That is what we are trying to find out, and whether it is going to be of use or not, whether it is going to be of some benefit to the organization or not. And then once we have answered these questions, then we move over to finding the actual requirements of the organization in the system analysis stage, and then we convert these requirements into technical specification, and then we develop the system and we do the coding and all that stuff. This is design and development. Once all of this has been done, we implement the system, and once the system has been implemented, in what sense are we going to implement the system? We are going to arrange the hardware, software, and for the user training, and then we would move over to conversion. Conversion is, see, up till now we were having some system, and now we are planning to come up with a new system for which we have done all these things: investigation, analysis, design and development, and then implementation. Now we are slowly converting, slowly, gradually, or in an instant also. We might want to convert the existing system into the new system, or we might want to get the existing system replaced by the new system. This is what we mean by the conversion stage. And once we have completed this, we will move over to the maintenance stage, which will take care of the routine modifications and routine improvements in the system, so that the system is up and running all the time, right? So these are the 6 stages which are there, and we'll be discussing them in more detail now. But my point is that please understand, here we have discussed these 6 stages. Somewhere in some other books, some other authors may have talked about the same concept of system development life cycle in their own manner, and they probably would say that no, there are 7 stages, and they would probably segregate this 3rd stage, design and development, into 2 stages. So one would be the design and the other one would be the development part. In some other books by some other authors, you would probably find that these 2 stages have been integrated into one. So the implementation is also talking about the conversion. So the conversion is inherent in implementation, right? In some other books, you would find that the nomenclatures are very, very different, right? Instead of investigation or instead of analysis, we have the term need analysis, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that these nomenclatures could be different in different places, these number of stages could be different, but overall, whosoever the author is and whichever the book you are reading, you would find that the general principles would remain the same, which would mean that the maintenance would always come after analysis and design and development, not before that. Investigation is always going to be the first thing. Investigation or feasibility analysis could be the term in some other books. So investigation or something like investigation is always going to be the first and the foremost thing. It cannot come after analysis. So the broad structure and the broad flow would be same in all the books. However, the specifics might be a little different, right? So do keep this in your mind and don't get confused when you are finding a slightly different terminology in a book which you are reading or which you are referring to. Fine. With this, we are ending this particular discussion today. This session is going to spill over to the next session. Basically, the topic is going to spill over to the next session, wherein we'll be discussing in detail the various stages in the system development life cycle, right? So thank you very much.